Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Good morning. If you could take your seats, please, we will get started so we can wrap it up today on time. Welcome, everyone, to the 9th Annual San Antonio Education Forum by the San Antonio Report. I'm Angie Mock, the publisher and CEO. We've switched it up a bit this year, as you can tell. We are starting with a keynote breakfast with the amazing Geoffrey Canada. And then, like magic, these doors are going to open afterwards, and we're going to go into the second part of this morning, which is some really deep discussion about the most pressing educational issues facing our community. Thank you, of course, to our generous sponsors, our leadership level sponsors of Partnership and the Charles Butt Foundation, our gold level sponsors, the Gambrinus Company Valero, thank you, and Harmony Public Schools, and our silver level sponsors, City Education Partners, USAA, Port San Antonio, Avance San Antonio, First Mark Credit Union, Pre-K for SA, and the City of San Antonio, Department of Human Services, San Antonio Youth Commission. Thank you all so much. You all know, many of you in the nonprofit space, that it's a heavy lift to do things like this, and we could not do it without the generosity of the community that supports this work. So we're super grateful. We're also really grateful to the San Antonio Report staff, and there's a group of volunteers that help every year put this forum on, and they work really hard. And if the committee members and the San Antonio Report staff could stand, we'd like to give y'all a round of applause. Thank you. And Isaac, if you could remain standing, I want to make sure everyone sees Isaac. A special round of applause for Isaac Wines. He's our super education reporter, and he's doing an incredible job of covering education in Bexar County. Isaac Wines. Thank you, Isaac. One of the really special parts of this annual event is that we recognize an education champion in our community, someone whose individual commitment and extraordinary service to public education outcomes in Bexar County merits special appreciation. This is a long-standing award that we give. Past winners include Mike Burke, who co-founded this forum, Charles Butt, chairman and CEO of HEB, Laura Salvador Luna, who was the former chief people officer for Teach for America and now is the founder of Pinata Possible. Check it out. Pedro Martinez and Patty Radel, who were joint winners from San Antonio ISD, Dr. Sherry Albright with the Charles Butt Foundation, and last year's winner, Dr. Mike Flores with Alamo Colleges. And in true Oscar style, we're going to have last year's winner present this year's winner. Welcome up, Dr. Flores.
Thank you, Angie. Good morning. Buenos dias. Come on, y'all. We're a room full of educators. Good morning. Buenos dias. All right. So it is, thank you, Angie. It really is an honor to be able to introduce this year's advocate and award winner. And so I want to tell you a little bit about Doctora Belinda Flores. She completed her PhD at the University of Texas at Austin in Curriculum and Instruction, CNI, with specializations in multilingual studies and educational psychology. In the year 2000, she received the first place award for outstanding dissertation from NABE, the National Association for Bilingual Education. In 2004, she earned UTSA President's Distinguished Award for Research Excellence, and she is also a member of the San Antonio Women's Hall of Fame. Doctora Flores' research focuses on teacher development, which includes self-concept, ethnic identity, efficacy, beliefs, teacher recruitment and retention, and the usage of high-stakes testing. Her work has been cited in top journals such as the Handbook of Teacher Education, the Journal of Latinos in Education, the Journal of Hispanic Higher Education, Multicultural Perspectives, and many, many others. The doctora is a highly regarded mentor by current and former colleagues. Her colleagues shared that she exemplifies exceptional mentorship, going beyond her responsibilities by also serving as a sponsor to ensure the growth and development of younger faculty members. She is a nationally renowned scholar who, with her scholarship, has also chosen to invest in others at UTSA. Her dedication to fostering opportunities for others speaks volumes about her commitment to academia and to mentorship. She's an innovator, a creator, and a blessing to the field. What is clear to many is her authentic connections to the community, authenticity, and her distinct ability to see what's possible in others, in our community, and to make those dreams into reality. Please join me in welcoming to the stage this year's recipient, Doctora Belinda Flores.
I want to thank the organization and everybody who nominated me for this award. It was unexpected. I always remind Mike that my humble beginnings and as a kid from San Antonio was at San Antonio College. So that got me my start. And being a native of San Antonio, a kid who grew up in the barrio, I've always dedicated my work and everything I do to my community, because I've always felt that in order to ensure that children have an educational opportunity, that they have the best teachers. And so that's what I've done, and I hope I've contributed to the well-being and the success of our children. Mil gracias.
Congratulations again to Dr. Flores. My name is Lee Munsell. I'm the editor-in-chief of the San Antonio Report. Thank you all for being here. Today I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker, someone I know you are all just as excited to hear from as I am. Geoffrey Canada is best known as the creator of the Harlem Children's Zone, a birth through college network of programs that serves more than 13,000 low-income students and families in a 97-block area of central Harlem in New York City. Canada grew up in the South Bronx and was raised by a strong single mother and has dedicated his life to helping children who grew up in disadvantaged circumstances to succeed through education. He earned his bachelor's degree from Bowdoin College and eventually went on to earn a master's degree at Harvard University. His work with the Harlem Children's Zone was featured in the documentary about the dire state of American education, Waiting for Superman. He was named one of the world's most influential people by Time magazine in 2011, and President Barack Obama created the Promised Neighborhoods Initiative to replicate the Harlem Children's Zone model across the country. In June 2020, Canada founded the William Julius Wilson Institute, which serves as a national platform to help communities affected by poverty across the country design and implement their own place-based programs, an effort that has brought him to San Antonio today. Please join me in a warm welcome for Geoffrey Canada.
Thank you. Thank you, and good morning. You all hear me okay? All right, great. I am absolutely thrilled to be here today because in my career, I've had lots of success. I don't think you all realize I retired from the Harlem Children's Zone. I did. I had decided when I turned 60, I was going to leave the Harlem Children's Zone because one of the challenges in our field is that you have to develop the next set of leaders. And if you just keep on staying and you don't, then no one younger gets to take the chance to do that. So I didn't get out at 60, I got out at 62. And people told me I would hate it. I did not hate it. I'm just saying, if you are educators, you know how it is. The later the call, the worse the crisis you're dealing with, right? So those 11 o'clock calls were never good. But once I retired, the worst call I got was from my grandson who needed $300. I mean, I could handle that, right? So why am I happy to be here? Because I retired. I was happily retired. And then I woke up in the middle of the night and I told her, God told me I had to save an additional 1 million kids. Now, okay, I don't know where people are on that God thing. This wasn't like a burning bush moment, right? It wasn't like, it was just spoken into my consciousness. And my wife looked at me, she said, you have no job, you got no staff, how are you going to save 1 million kids? And I said, I don't know, but I'm going to do it. And our CEO, Kwame Wusakesi, decided he wanted to do something national, and I came out of retirement to create the William Julius Wilson Institute. But let me tell you what happened. I wasn't out of retirement for 6 months before COVID hit. And then I realized why God needed me back in this struggle. I don't know if you have any idea of how devastating this was to our children. And the poorer you were, the worse this thing hit you. And I watched our young people in Harlem, isolated. Many of them didn't have food, and they didn't have access to medicine and other things. And I realized that we had to do a clarion call to say to this country that our children are in deep, deep trouble and we need to do something extraordinary if we're going to save them. And the biggest challenge I felt was once COVID was over, right, which we know is not over, but it's now just sort of like one of the common things like the flu, that the country would go back to normal, which we have, no mask, everybody's out. People are traveling, going on vacation, and everybody would say, oh, we're good, except for one group. Our children are not good. Our young people have gone through something that is just devastating. And what we know about trauma and what we know about toxic stress leads us to know that this is going to be a generational challenge for us to deal with. And we're going to have people step up for real and say, this is the most important thing we're going to do in our lifetime. If you care about this country, if you care about San Antonio, I am telling you right now, we are seeing the sowing of the next generational inequality happening right now. There will be a time 10 years from now when people will be wondering, why is our labor force so challenged? Why are our jails filled to overflowing? Why do we have such a mental health crisis? And they will say, those are the COVID kids. Now, I'm telling you this now because this is not destiny, because we can do something about it right now to change that. but not if we keep doing what we have been doing. I was on MSNBC talking about chronic absenteeism. Most big cities, 40% of the kids are chronically absent. That's unbelievable. You can't educate a child if they're not coming to school. What are we doing about that? Nothing. Nothing. To throw up their hands. Okay, they know they're not showing up. I don't know where the kids are. This is one of those moments where we have to come together and say, enough is enough. And why I'm happy to be here in San Antonio, when I was leaving, some of you may not know my wife, Yvonne, she's a Harlem girl. We're about to celebrate our 30 years of marriage in a few months. And she was asking me, she was like, Jeff, you're a little old to be getting on these flights and running around the country, yelling and screaming at people. I said, but I got to get to 1 million kids. And those folks in San Antonio, they are serious. It's been a year since I've been here. What has happened here is remarkable. I mean, there are not many places where I can go into and say, wow, they've raised over $100 million to support young people. That is historical in and of itself. There are just not many places that have done that. And then when I think about the Future Ready plan and how serious you all are, and anyone who knows anything about running businesses, you invest in talent, and Ryan and his team at UP are some of the most talented people I've met in this country. So I have every expectation that San Antonio is going to set the high water mark for what it means to deal with children in this country who are really struggling. And for me, I've been in this game a long time. Next year, I will be able to say, I hope you all invite me back, that I've been doing this for 50 years because I started this work in 1975. And do you know what it means when you've been working in education for 50 years? I mean, I was at Harvard. We have our summer institute there. I was at Harvard last summer, and this man stopped me, and he was like, Mr. Canada, you recognize me? He's one of my first kids. He was gray. He was bald. I was like, no, I don't recognize you. Who are you? He was like, I was one of your kids. And I know my staff looked at me and said, how old are you? Look at this guy. In my education career, this is the toughest time for poor children in America. I mean, I've gone through some tough times. When I was in Boston during busing, and there was a whole racial scene going on, through the crack epidemic in the 80s and the 90s, through the violence. This is the toughest time for children. And it's going to take a real effort to make sure that we equalize this. Now, I'm going to tell you this. With all I've said, this is infinitely doable if you have a plan, if you have the resources, and if you have the commitment to stay the course over time. And you know why I know that? Because my 10,000 kids in Harlem, we've already eliminated that learning gap with those kids. We've got our kids even higher than before COVID, but it took extraordinary efforts for us to do that. So this is not impossible, this is not rocket science. This is whether or not we are prepared to put a plan in place and make sure that plan is well executed and hold people accountable for the execution of that plan. Now, there are 3 different groups of kids. This is just sort of a gross sort of lumping of kids together. There are extraordinary kids who show talent early on, These are what I call our honors kids. And I understand we have an honors program here, right? Which is great because you've got to save the low-hanging fruit. A lot of these kids, unless someone tells them, hey, you're important, you're special, I'm going to give you sort of all the additional expertise that I have to offer, these kids are going to grow up and they're going to be extraordinary as long as they get the support. Then there's what I call our average kids. These are kids that unless you reach them, they will not go into a strong post-secondary opportunity. Right? But these aren't kids who are failing. These are just your average kid living, and no one thinks they're special. No one is reaching and grabbing them. And your mark of 70% that you want to have post-secondary experiences, either college or the military, you need these average kids to believe they are not average. They are extraordinary. And with the proper support, they will become extraordinary. So that, I think, this is my big fear for San Antonio. Can I just share this with you all? If you do the talented kids and you do the average kids, you might reach your high water mark. You might come in 5 years. We did it. We got 70% of our kids there. Those are not the kids that I'm the most worried about. It's those struggling kids. It's those kids growing up in places that they just haven't had a fair shot. It's all the kids in schools and neighborhoods that people know have failed year after year after. Those are the young people that you've got to make sure they don't get lost in the averages. That when you begin to look at success, you're just not looking at, the kids that are extraordinary and the kids that you've been able to move who are average, and you've made those kids extraordinary. You've got to make sure that you've coming up with a plan that you're going to save every child. Every. And it's the every that worries me, because there are a lot of folks who are prepared to work with those most talented kids. Raise their hands, oh yeah, I want to do that. There are a lot of folks you can find, even though we're struggling as teachers, you can find folks who believe in those average kids. Those kids who are, we know, not even going to finish high school. Many of them are going to leave 15, 16. They're going to end up getting pulled into the gang thing or the drug thing. That group of kids, we must make sure is part of this plan of what it is we're trying to do. Because those are the kids that when you save them, you by definition will get all the other kids. I worry about these kids because at the Harlem Children's Zone, we have one expectation. All of our kids are going to go to college. That's our expectation. We got about 20% of our kids are special education kids. They're all going to college. There's no, oh, no, I'm sorry, you're special education. No, those kids are going to college too. We're holding everybody responsible. And you know what happens? They do go to college. They do. As long as you have a plan for every kid. Now, sometimes you get challenged. Now, I believe in every kid. You've heard me say that. But every now and then, you get tested. I had this tested. There's this one kid. They brought him to me. He was in a gang, and there was the other gang, they were trying to kill the kid, right? So they brought him, the kid was in real trouble. Then this kid was so bad, his own gang was trying to kill him. I was like, how you get to a place where your own gang wants to kill you? His mama put him out of his house because she couldn't live with him either. And now they bring the kid to me, and I'm like, oh my goodness. They say, Jeff, you say we could save every kid. You can't save this one. I was like, okay, I came up with this brilliant plan. I said, you know what? There are places for kids like this. We're going to send them to one of those wilderness camps. You know those wilderness camps, right? You take them out in Arizona, the kids go out there, they have to backpack and make their own fire and do that. So I know someone out there, I called them, said, look, I got this kid, and we can't handle him. This is what we do, Jeff, send him to us. I said, he's a tough kid. Jeff, that's all we deal with, tough kids. I sent him there on Monday. They sent him back on Thursday. Like, not that kid. So now my staff is looking at me like, okay, what are we going to do? And I said, we're going to try and keep this kid alive one day at a time. Let's find him a place tonight, and then we'll work on tomorrow. And we're doing this day-by-day thing. And then the kid falls off the radar screen. I'm asking, what happened? No one's seen the kid. No one's seen the kid. Life goes on. I knew that was going to be a tough case. 2 years later, I get a call. Say, oh, there's somebody in the reception area. They want to see you. I go there. It's the kid. Says to me, Jeff, you know I was a problem. Yeah, it's a little bit of an understatement. Yes, you're a problem. He said, but I realized that you had said the only answer was for me to go away. And I've been away for 2 years. And I just want you to know, I've just finished my second year of college. And I looked at that kid. And I said, Jeff, even you, after decades in this field, cannot predict which kids are going to make it and what it's going to take to save a child. And when I say every child, I mean every child. We wouldn't give up on our own children. We wouldn't give up on our grandkids. We wouldn't give up on our cousins and our nieces and our nephews. We can give up on the poorest kids in our community. So, here in San Antonio, you have an opportunity to make history. And I really mean that. There's never been a city in this country that has made a decision that we're going to save our children at the number that you all are talking about and have pulled this thing off. And there are a couple of reasons. First of all, people usually don't have the resources. Not the case here. Second, people often don't have the leadership. Not the case here. Third, people often don't have the time, because none of this stuff happens overnight. You've got to take an investment and be prepared to support that investment for years. And, you know, we started the Harlem Children's Zone 21 years ago. It took us about 4 or 5 years before we began to really get real results that you could point to. I mean, the first couple of years, people were saying, yeah, big deal. We don't understand this thing. Now everybody says, oh, yeah, this is extraordinary. Look what you all have done. If you ensure that this plan is followed, and by the way, as much as I know about this field, I'm learning about the work here. There are already 2 or 3 ideas here I'm going to steal and take back to Harlem. I hope y'all don't, be upset with me if you see me on, the news and I'm talking. You say, hey, he stole that from us down here. Because there is some really creative, innovative thinking going on that makes a difference. And I think you all have put together the right team to pull this work off. Now, this idea of having college access for kids while they're still in high school, and I understand Chancellor Flores is here, and this is just extraordinary. I mean, what an opportunity to demonstrate to the country, I'm talking to the entire country, a way to rethink education and how to bring education, the importance of education, into a child's life. You know, we have, our kids all have a saying, because Harlem, where my kids are from, when I started in this work with them 21 years ago, no kids from Harlem went to college. It wasn't even a thing. No one even thought about it. And we wanted to build a culture. We wanted to absolutely change the culture. A lot of schools, when I grew up, if you were really smart, kids picked on you. You often had to hide how smart you were to keep from getting beat up after school. And what kind of culture is that for a young person to grow up in, to think if I'm acting like I'm smart, my peers are going to turn on me? Well, in certain communities, that's just the nature of things, and it certainly was the nature in Harlem. And we wanted to go from a culture that only supported folks if they could rap or play basketball, to a culture that supported folks who got straight A's. And we wanted to build that into the DNA of our young people. So we created a creed for our kids, and every year they would say their creed, and at the end of the creed it says, I will go to college, I will succeed, this is my promise, this is my creed. And I brought my youngest son in one day, and we had those kids come out in the hallway. The whole hallway, kindergarten, first graders, and they sing it in unison. And my son looked at me and he said, Dad, you're brainwashing those kids. I said, that's right. That's exactly what I'm doing. And now for the second graduation in a row, where 100% of these kids from our charter schools are going off to college. The kids get up, all seniors, and they say their creed for the last time. And I'm crying. I can't, because they all come and say to me, Mr. Canada, don't you remember when I was in kindergarten and you were there with me? And the parents are there. I said, of course I remember you. I don't know who that child is. I mean, that was 18 years ago. Right? How do I know who that kid is, right? It doesn't matter, because the culture has changed. People believe. They actually think if you're not going to college, then that's abnormal. You have the opportunity to do that for this entire city. It's extraordinary. Under the most challenging of circumstances. And I will tell you, the work you all have done is not over. It's not. No time to rest on the laurels. I think when you did the plan, it was before we knew what COVID was really doing to our children. Now this data's coming out, and we're going to have to do even more. So my hope is that you all will continue to think outside the box when it comes to working with these young people, because they don't have an alternative. There's no one else coming in. You know, Waiting for Superman, that title came from the fact that growing up in the South Bronx, which was one of these communities where you knew kids weren't going to make it, I knew that if there were no superheroes, we weren't going to get saved. I just knew it. And David Guggenheim, who was the producer of the show, I said that in that documentary, and he decided to name that documentary after that statement, Waiting for Superman. And I tell folk, the superheroes our kids need are in this room. And absent you all, they have no one strong enough and powerful enough to help them. One of the things, I want to be a hero to kids. You know, when I grew up, Nicky Barnes was on the front cover of Time, of the New York Times magazine section. He was the biggest drug dealer in Harlem. And all my kids knew and looked up to him. And I thought, what kind of world have we created when that's a hero? When I ended up on the front page of the New York Times magazine, I said to my team, we hope our young people recognize there are people powerful enough in their lives to overcome whatever challenges they are facing. Because our kids know these challenges, they know them in depth. And you all are going to need to step up if these kids are going to make it. I'm telling you right now, these next 3 to 5 years will be the most important years in this city's future if you expect your young people to have a chance. We're going to have to dig in right now. We're going to have to do things we've never done before. We're going to have to ask folks who are already the field. You know, I don't know if you know about what's happening in the field of education. Teachers are leaving. People are exhausted. Folks decide that you're not making enough money. This job is too tough. Principals are leaving. Superintendents, they're getting out of this field. They feel like they're unappreciated. People don't understand what they go through. I tell folks, you know, I have a bunch of friends who are CEOs and Fortune 500 companies, and they always come and tell me, Jeff, you know what? You could have been a Fortune 500 CEO if you wanted to. But you know what I'm thinking? Yeah, but you could have never been a teacher in my school. You just don't have the skills to pull that job off. And some of y'all know I'm not kidding. What it takes to be every day in front of a group of young people and inspire them and educate them. And you got 20 people, 30 people looking at you constantly, and you're the smartest person in their world, and you've got their lives in your hand. Every day, year after year, it's one of the hardest jobs in America. It really is. It's one of the most unappreciated jobs, and we've got to go out and make sure that our educators know. We know how tough it is. We know how hard they're working, and we're going to support them in ways that they never dreamed of before. Because in the end, if we don't have those educators, we have no future in our cities, and there's no getting around that, and we're in the midst of a crisis right now. I mean, one of the things you all need to really think about, how are we going to make teaching in San Antonio the most exciting occupation you could have? Because you're going to have to do it, and it's not going to happen the way it's been happening. You know, there are folks who know how to recruit talent. You go down to California and Silicon Valley, they are recruiting talent. They know how to do it. They're out there making sure they get the smartest and the best because they know what the bottom line means there. For us, educators, yeah, struggling. We got to change that. We got to treat this as if we're recruiting the most valuable people in this city, because in the end, they will be. So part of my issue is about accountability and holding ourselves accountable. And I know I was with Ryan. We were in a beautiful park, and I kept getting calls from my office because in the end, people know the toughest children and the toughest families. I am holding myself accountable for them. When we say we're going to save every kid, we're going to save every kid. Every kid that I come in contact with, I want to be saved. So those kids that folks don't know what to do with, call me. I'm going to fix that situation. Who's going to do that here? Who's going to make sure those bottom 30% of kids, somebody knows who's being held responsible for all of those kids? That's how this is going to work for everybody, and we're going to save all of our children. This is how we're going to have to hold ourselves accountable. And when you come up with the plans, I hope you constantly ask yourself, where are our kids struggling the most? And what is our plan for those kids? And how are we going to ensure those kids are successful? And you know what's so complicated about this, somewhat paradoxical? The places that need our help the most are the places most folks don't want to work. It's going to be the hardest place to recruit teachers, to retain teachers, the hardest place to have the not-for-profits doing the work. But we've got to figure this out. We've got to solve this, because you are not going to get those kids on grade level if they're not having great summer experiences, if they're not having great weekend experiences, if they're not being engaged in the kind of tutoring and the support that allows them to make up for what they've already lost. So here we need folks who are going into the toughest places, making sure these kids have a chance. And this to me is about accountability. So I'm hoping that you all will hear two messages from me. One, our kids are in crisis. And two, there's an answer. And you all have the answer here. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be like, oh yeah, we'll just go on, everything's going to be fine. It's going to call for extraordinary efforts by folks being targeted, making sure that we're holding people accountable, and in the end, taking personal responsibility for this work, so that every person here recognizes I'm on the hook. You know, the one thing our CEO likes to say, which I really appreciate, when things are going good, everybody raises their hand, say, yeah, I was part of that. Let me tell you what I did to make that happen. And, oh yeah. When things are going bad, no one raises their hand. Everybody points a finger. Oh yeah, they're failing. Oh, they're not doing their job. My job is when things are failing to take personal responsibility and say, I'm going to fix it. Folks are going to have to step up because my kids in Harlem, I will guarantee you, they're going to be successful. Why? Because I'm taking personal responsibility for all the ones who are failing, and I'm going to make sure those kids are successful. We need you all to do the same thing. To step up, to take personal responsibility. You have to find the trouble. See, I'm looking for the troubled kids. I don't want the A students. Somebody else can handle them. That's their job. I want those kids who are failing, who are flunking, who are in trouble. Those are the kids I want because I know how to save them. There are ways to save those kids. I'm not saying we got to save those talented. We got to save those average. But we also have to go into those neighborhoods where those kids are struggling and take personal responsibility. Now, I know it's early in the morning for me to be yelling at y'all. I know that, but y'all did invite me here. Y'all know how I am. So I'd like to close with a poem. And Ryan reminded me that the poem I'm using all over the country is A Small Army of Love because I can't help it. This to me is war. This to me is combat. We're fighting an enemy right now that's going to destroy the lives of thousands and tens of thousands of our kids. And you can't be in this war and think this thing is a game or this thing is not. It is serious. It is serious, and it is important. And these next few years will be so important. But I'm going to do a different poem today that I wrote, which is called Don't Blame Me. The girl's mother said, don't blame me. Her father left when she was 3. I know she don't know her ABCs, her 1, 2, 3s, but I am poor and work hard, you see. You know the story, it's don't blame me. The teacher shook her head and said, don't blame me, I know it's sad. He's 10, but if the truth be told, he reads like he was 6 years old. In math, don't ask. It's sad, you see. Wish I could do more, but it's after 3. Blame the mom, blame society, blame the system, just don't blame me. The judge was angry, his expression cold. He scowled and said, son, you've been told, break the law again and you'll do time. You've robbed with a gun. Have you lost your mind? The young man opened his mouth to beg. Save your breath, he heard instead. Your daddy left when you were 2. Your mama didn't take care of you. Your school prepared you for this fall. Can't read, can't write, can't spell at all. But you did the crime for all to see. You're going to jail, son. Don't blame me. If there is a God or a person supreme, a final reckoning for the kind and the mean, and judgment is rendered on who passed the buck, who blamed the victim, or who proudly stood up. You'll say to the world, while I couldn't save all, I did not let these children fall. By the thousands, I helped all I could see. No excuses. I took full responsibility. No matter if they were black or white, were cursed, ignored, were wrong or right, were shunned, prejudged, were short or tall, I did my best to save them all. And I will bear witness for eternity that you can state proudly, don't blame me. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for Mr. Canada. Thank you. I'm a little emotional. That was really powerful. Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ryan Lugalia-Holland, the Chief Executive Officer of the nonprofit UP Partnership. The organization serves as the lead convener of the Future Ready Bexar County Plan, a community plan that counts more than 90 local youth-serving agency and nonprofit partners. Together with national and local funders, nearly $114 million in funding is being coordinated across the next 7 years to support the North Star goal of increasing enrollment of recent high school graduates in post-secondary degree or credential programs from about half of Bexar County youth to 70% by 2030. Now to tell you more about how these efforts are helping students in Bexar County, please welcome to the stage Ryan Lugalia-Holland.
Okay, I got 5 minutes, and I need to do 2 things. I need to give y'all an update on the Future Ready Plan, and for those who don't know about it, I need to make sure you know how to get involved. And I need to make sure every single person in this room leaves with at least 1, if not 5, new action commitments to support our young people. The first action ask that I have is a little different. So I challenge you, Jeff. You challenged us. I'll talk about that in a second. I challenge you, when you hit 50 years of service in this work, to drop your poetry album. We're ready for it. So the first ask is, raise your hand if you would buy Jeff's poetry album when it drops on his 50th anniversary. We're ready. We need it. Let me just first respond, because Jeff challenged us real directly. One thing I got from your poem right there is that when we blame people for their poverty, that's really a projection. You ever been in an argument where you realize you're arguing with yourself? That's a projection of us not using our own power. When we act like we don't have the power to step in and make a difference, then we start blaming other people. So we have to settle in our own power. Power is really the flip side of responsibility. You know, when Jeff talks about responsibility, he's also talking about power. We have to claim our power. Can I ask all of the Future Ready partners in the room, anybody tied to the Future Ready plan, to please stand? Let's give a round of applause for these amazing leaders. Thank you all. So these are all leaders who stepped up. Coming out of the pandemic, our board, Chancellor Flores, Sherry, and others came together and said, hey, we see the way this pandemic is going. We can foretell a little bit of what Jeff's talking about. And before it was a phrase, said we're going to build back better. We're going to make sure that by the end of the time that the story of the pandemic is told, our children are better off than when they started. And they launched an equitable recovery pledge in April of 2020. Fast forward to April of 2022, many of the leaders you just saw and dozens of others were on the steps of City Hall launching the first phase of the Future Ready Bexar County Plan. Now, all this coordinated money wasn't even a pipe dream for us at that point. It was just leaders stepping up, making bold action commitments to scale healing, access, and voice for our young people, and declaring the North Star that Jeff just talked about, which is by the year 2030, we will ensure we have a 70% post-secondary enrollment rate in our community. That's a 20 percentage point jump in 7 years. So we all committed to that. And then, you know, that got some attention, and the invitation to bring down a big investment from Blue Meridian Partners came on the table, and incredible leaders like the Charles Butt Foundation, the H.E. Butt Foundation, the San Antonio Area Foundation, the United Way, and others, and USAA stepped up to make that happen. And I'll talk about that in a second. But, you know, the way we tap into our power is through action. And I just want to tackle a couple of the specific issues Jeff just laid out. One was around teacher recruitment. Could I ask the team from City Education Partners to stand? Dahlia and team. They're doing an amazing job on teacher recruitment. Seriously. And anybody who wants to be a part of that issue and is not yet plugged in, please approach one of the City Education Partner leaders and ask them how they can get plugged into the teacher recruitment effort. And I want to, Angie, thank the corporate sponsors here today. Could I ask anybody here from a San Antonio-based corporation, please stand? Valero, USAA, HEB, will you please stand? Thank you all for being here, and I have good news and bad news. The good news is I'm not asking you for any money right now. I'm going to ask you for something much more important. Jeff talked about the crisis of chronic absenteeism in our community. More important even than the money you give to our community is how committed are you to the educational outcomes of the children of your employees? What is the chronic absenteeism rate of the children of family members who work at Valero, who work at HEB, who work at USAA? What is their post-secondary enrollment rate? I challenge you to step up and be a part of that solution. And if you're willing to do that, our organization, Up Partnership, would be proud to walk alongside you. Romanita is here from Greater SATX. I know she'd be proud to walk alongside you. When Jeff talks about taking personal responsibility, you know, you have thousands of employees in your care, right? We can't solve this problem in isolation unless you also deepen your commitment to them. We need to see that. I want to give some shout outs of exemplary institutions that since the launch of the Future Ready Bexar County Plan have really pointed the way. So this should come as no surprise, but Chancellor Mike Flores and the Alamo colleges have scaled the Alamo Promise since we launched the plan to all 73 comprehensive public high schools and connected that to Bold Promise through a Promise to Promise partnership. Huge round of applause for Alamo colleges. Stephanie Vasquez is here. UTSA not only has sustained its old Bold Promise, but is now scaling its own innovation in direct admissions so that young people who are qualified to go to UTSA without even having to apply are being proactively found and given an admissions letter. That's an incredible innovation. East Central ISD, in partnership with communities and schools, is cutting down by far its suspension and expulsion rates in powerful ways, and at the that's a delivery on Jeff's commitment for every young person to be a part of the pathway to their promise. And at the same time, they're making advanced academics like AP, like IB, like dual credit, an opt-out situation. So they're saying, hey, if you don't want to do advanced academics, you better come with your mom and your dad and convince us why, because otherwise we're putting you on that fast track. That's exactly what we have to normalize. Huge shout out to them. Northside ISD is working with the Department of Human Services, who I know is here today. Shout out to Rebecca Flores for building the Next Level Opportunity Center model. Truly an incredible model for how we re-engage our disconnected youth, doing exactly the work that Jeff is talking about so that when young people get disconnected from school and from work, we go out and find them and tell them, hey, no, we need you to be back on this path. Shout out also to Northside for building that model. Cass Schools Network is here today. Cass Schools is pushing us past the false binary of, hey, we want to do this innovative thing or this innovative thing. They're saying, no, no, no. Our young people need all of the innovative things. For example, they are really demonstrating what youth leadership and what college and career readiness look like when fully braided and integrated in a way that we hope and we know our community needs to be scaled across all of our school districts. Huge shout out to Cass Schools Network for that work. You know, we launched the Equitable Recovery Pledge in 2020. We launched the plan in 2022. It's 2024 now. Jeff told us we can't get comfortable, right? Jeff told us the status quo is as much of our enemy as anything else. That applies, I want to give a shout out now to the SA report. That applies to this event itself. This education forum, which is in its 9th year, SA report knows they need to innovate. We need to be tracking our progress as a community of people who show up to this event year to year to year to year to make sure that we're not blaming others, that we're stepping in and being a part of the solution. So the second half of this event is going to be doing exactly that. So I challenge everybody in this room, when you're in those breakout group conversations, don't be texting on your phone. You know, don't be talking about, you know, what happened over the weekend, though I hope it was beautiful and cool and you posted about it. But be talking about what you can do, will do to elevate your commitment to our young people. Jeff doesn't have to be here. Don't waste his time, right? Let's make sure we walk out of those table conversations with a much deeper plan for how we're going to show up together, because showing up together is really the name of the game. So I just want to give a few quick shout outs to our team. So our team is doing things like scaling the training for high quality relationships that young people need. We call them developmental relationships, so that everybody knows how to show up for our young people in the ways they deserve. Our team has built a platform for scaling that across agencies. Our team is building a unified advising guide, because we know we will never have enough college or career advisors in our community. So how do we activate every adult and willing young person to be advisors in one another's lives? Our team is doing the work that Jeff talked about, which is going out to support the young people impacted by the justice system by doing things like building community-based supports around alternative schools. I'm extremely proud of our team, and we'll be doing a lot more of that in partnership with you all as we drive forward. I have one last call to action. Do not blame City of San Antonio folks. What I'm about to say is not endorsed by the San Antonio report, and it's not their fault. It is my fault entirely. But I snuck over at that table, and I put to the tables on the other side of the room, and I put flyers for a campaign we have going on right now. Right now, young people make up 35% of our city's population, but only about 6% of the annual budget goes to children and youth. That was true in 2019, that's true in 2024. That is unacceptable. You know, the city budget grew from 3.4 to 3.7 billion last year. We're leaving so much money on the table, especially when our school districts are facing deficit budgets because of the state. And until Julia Grizzard and Bexar County Education Coalition can solve that issue, which we know they will if we stand with them, we have to do everything we can at the local level to really increase our investment in young people. And now is the time to do it. Right now, the city charter is under review. The Charter Review Commission is actively meeting, and we are calling for a 20% permanent set-aside of the growth in our city revenue to go to children and youth. Council will allocate where it goes every year based on needs. We're not taking away from their powers, and we're focused on 20% of the revenue growth. So this isn't messing with any of the existing budget priorities. But as our city grows, our investments in our young people have to grow as well, because that's how our tax base is going to keep expanding. This is the closest thing to perpetual motion that we can create, and we can create it together. And I have 3 action asks for everybody in this room. First, if you have Mayor Nirenberg's cell phone, he knows about this plan, text him right now and say, I'm at the Education Forum and I want to see a permanent set-aside for children and youth. You think I'm joking, but I'm not. We need to, so I know many of you have a cell phone, so I want to see that action. Number 2, on this flyer, it'll take you to SA Speak Up, where you can leave a comment. If you don't have the mayor's cell phone, and if you also want to do more, you can leave a comment and say, I support the permanent set-aside for children and youth. Leave that comment. It will be read. It will be noticed. Last but not least, the flyer, which you'll find over at those tables, is an invitation to join us at Central Library on April 25th at 5:30 p.m. to demand that we think about the future in the revisions to our city charter, which is our Constitution that we're making today. And without further ado, I'm going to tee up a video that points a little bit more to where we're headed with the next phase of the Future Ready plan. Thank you all.
You ready?
Almost.
I love you, Aisha.
Bye, Dad. What is Future Ready?
¿Listo, mi amor?
Sí, Belita.
Que te vaya bien.
What is Future Ready? Future Ready is learning. Future Ready is doing what is right for students, even when it's hard.
Future Ready is lifting up student voice.
Future Ready is providing healing opportunities. Future Ready is access to brighter futures.
Access to brighter futures. Future Ready is working together to create solutions. Future Ready is promising support.
And seeing it through.
What Future Ready
meant to me
May look
Different for you.
Here's to all the ready makers.
And here's to the future.
Thank you all again. This is not over. We're about to transition into the second half of our event today, and I promise we will be respectful of your time, so please participate fully in the discussions. I just wanted to quickly mention the San Antonio Report is a nonprofit newsroom here in San Antonio, and we can't do this work without your help. So please, if you haven't signed up for our newsletters, sign up for our newsletters. If you are already readers, consider becoming contributing members. We do this work because it's so essential to have these conversations in our community. We've long thought that the special sauce of this education forum, which is heading into its 10th year next year, is just how dedicated this room is. The people in this room have something to offer the educational community in San Antonio, and so we really want to harness that this year with the table discussions that we've designed, particularly to maximize the impact of this event over the months to come. You'll have 40 minutes to address 4 questions, so please dig in and participate fully. We'll have note takers stationed at each table, and your conversations will help inform our follow-up coverage from this event, as well as Future Ready Bexar County's execution in the coming year. So even though this format is new, we believe that today's conversations will have real impact in the months to come. We will announce when we're halfway through with the time for table conversations and when we have 10 minutes left to go so that you can budget your time for the conversation. So go ahead and head to the other side of the room. If you have any questions, a member of staff will help you. Thank you.